Hello students, Standard 3 Subject English. Today we will be doing a new story in your Bhalbharti titled The Noble Stag. Children, as you already may be knowing, a stag is a male deer. You see the picture on the top left of your screen. That is a stag. Now today we are studying the story of the noble stag. Someone who is noble is very kind and selfless, who doesn't think about himself, kind and helpful. Now, what is it that makes the stag so noble? We will find out in the story today. So let us begin reading the story. The Noble Stag. As we all know, King Brahmadatta of Benares was extremely fond of hunting. Luckily for him, on the outskirts of the city was a huge forest filled with deer. Among them, there was a mighty stag. Now the story opens in the city of Benares. Benares is a city in Uttar Pradesh. Now, King Brahmadatta ruled over Benares many years ago. And as this was the custom in those days, the kings were fond of hunting. King Brahmadatta was also no different. He was very fond of hunting animals, and luckily enough for him, just outside the city, on the border of the city, outside, surrounding on all sides, was a forest which was filled with deer. What more did a king want who was extremely fond of hunting? And every day or very often he would go with his people whenever he would get time to hunt deer. Now in this forest lived a hero, a mighty stag. The actual hero of this our story today is a mighty stag. Mighty, powerful, strong. One fine day, the king had gone hunting with his courtiers. He told his courtiers, "If you allow even a single deer to escape, I will punish you severely." So the courtiers formed a tight circle from which no deer could escape. Then they began to beat their sticks on the ground to frighten the deer hiding in the bushes and to make them run. The only way out of the circle was through a small clearing where the king stood ready with his bows and arrows. The courtiers were beating their sticks on the ground and shouting, when suddenly a stag leapt out of a thicket. Now one day the king with his people, with the people who work in the court, his soldiers, his ministers, he decides to go out for hunting. Now the people in the court who work in the king's court have a special name. They are called courtiers. I'm sure you guessed it. Now the king, when he goes, he gives a strict warning to all his people. He tells his people that I will punish you even if one deer escapes or if is let off. I'm going to punish you all very strictly. So the courtiers, now the king's orders cannot be refused or turned down. So the courtiers were all the more scared. They were making sure that no deer should escape. So they made a circle. And at the entrance of the circle, there is a small place where a small opening where the king was standing. Small clearing, opening. And what did the king hunt with? Did he have a gun? No, in those days people used bow and arrows. So the king was also standing in the opening with the bow and arrows, and the courtiers were beating the sticks to frighten the deer. The deer were hiding in the bushes, as the animals have got a sense. They can smell when human beings are around or some any other danger is around. So they hide. But and what people do is, hunters, what they have the practice is that they either burn, they start lighting a fire, they light a fire, and animals are scared of fire. So they try to run here and there, they are scared, they are confused, and they try to run here and there, and they are caught by the hunters. Or the other way is they make a loud noise. The hunters make a loud noise by beating on the drums, or by beating on the ground with huge sticks, and the animal, any animal, not just deer, any animal is scared by the noise also. And again they try to run out and from their hiding places. And when they try to run out, they are confused, and then they are caught or they are shot by the bow and arrow of the hunter. So this is the practice which is followed by the king and his courtiers, and they were beating on the sticks on the ground so that the deer which is hiding in the thicket is what you see on the left hand side down below on your screen. It is thick bushes. So the deer is hiding in the thick bushes. Suddenly a stag leapt out. Leapt out means jumped out of the thicket. It was scared. With all the noise, it was confused. So it leapt out of the thicket from the thick bushes. Now the stag is directly in front of danger. The stag saw that the king was standing in the way. So he looked the king straight in the eye and made a dash towards him. The king was taken aback and shot an arrow towards the stag hurriedly. Of course, it missed the mark, but the stag rolled over. Now the stag saw that the king was directly in front. He had no opening from where to run away. So instead of turning back and running, the stag did a smart thing. What did he do? He looked at the king straight in the eye as if he was not scared, and he made a dash. He hurried towards the king. The king was startled. He did not expect the stag to do that. He thought the stag would turn and run and he can shoot the arrow. But the stag was very smart. When he went straight, the king was a little startled, taken aback, because an animal coming at you with force, you are scared. So the king was taken aback, and in that confusion, he shot an arrow. Somehow he shot an arrow without taking proper aim, because he was also not in the, he also did not get time to take proper aim and shoot. So it is, of course, it missed the mark. It did not hit the stag. The mark was supposed to be the stag, but it did not hit him. And the stag started rolling over on the ground as if it has got hit. Now we will know the reason why the stag did that. Now there is one thing that you must know about the stag. It has excellent instincts and is extremely good at dodging arrows, whether shot at from the back, front, or even the top. If an arrow is aimed at its belly, it pretends to roll over and then jumps up and runs once the danger has passed. Now that stag, why did the stag roll over is told here. It has got an excellent sense, instinct. Instinct is to save oneself, sense to save oneself. So it started dodging arrows. It is good at dodging arrows from wherever it is shot, from here, there, left, right, back, front. And suppose the arrow is shot at its belly, stomach area. It pretends, acts as if it has got hurt. It acts, pretends, and starts rolling over. So that is what the stag was doing here. When the king shot the arrow, it actually did not hit the stag. But to confuse the king, it started rolling over. And once the danger is over, once the king relaxes, or once the hunter relaxes by throwing the bow and the arrow down, or keeping the bow and the arrow down, it will suddenly get up and move, make a dash. So this was what our stag was doing. It was rolling over, and when the king would relax and keep his bow and arrow, the stag was planning to make a move out of that circle which the courtiers had made. Because if the king knows that the stag is not hit, he may try to shoot again and again, and it may not miss the mark now. It may get hurt. So that is what the stag was trying to do. So when the stag rolled over, the king thought that his arrow has found its mark. But now the stag has fooled the king. When it is rolling over, the king thinks, my arrow has found its mark. The stag is hurt. He lowered his bow and began to walk towards the stag. But the stag suddenly jumped up and shot past the men. The stag suddenly gets up and then it moves, runs past this. The courtiers were also relaxed, thinking that okay, the stag is hurt now. The king is such a big fine stag he has caught, so now they are relaxed. But the stag suddenly dashes and it saves itself. When the courtiers realized that the king had been mistaken, they started to laugh. But when the stag went off, it just shot past the men were startled. And then they realized, oh, we have been fooled by this stag. And especially the king. And they all start laughing because the king had been mistaken and was made a fool of actually by the stag. Was fooled by the stag. So they start laughing. Now the king thought himself to be an excellent marksman and could not bear the taunts of his men. Now for the king, this was like some insult. It was like a taunt. How you say taunt is chidhana in Hindi. So the king thought that he was an excellent hunter, that his mark would never be missed. And here the stag runs past him. He loses his aim and the stag shot past him. He was fooled by the stag, thinking that he has killed the stag, and the men laughing at him, his courtiers laughing at him, his own men, he could not bear it. He was very upset. Taunting is chidhana, or when you make funny comments about people and laugh at them, that is called taunting. He grabbed his sword and set off into the forest in order to catch the stag. He chased the stag for quite a while and covered a long distance. Now what does he do? His bow and arrows fall and he takes his sword and runs after he doesn't think. Now the deer is also a fast runner. The deer is one of the fastest animals. But the king is not thinking about anything. He just takes his sword and runs after the stag in order to catch it. He chased the stag for quite a while. He runs after the stag and he moves fast. He runs fast because now he is determined. He wants to kill the stag or take hold of the stag which had fooled him. Now see what happens further in the story. Now as you can see in the picture here, look at the clearing and the king standing in front of the clearing and the stag suddenly jumping out, the king losing its aim, and the courtiers all looking surprised, taken aback, startled. Okay, so this is what has happened, and now the stag is running away, the king is chasing the stag. Now let us see further what happens in the story. The stag came upon a hole in the ground that was covered by a rotting tree and filled with slime. From a distance, it could smell the dirty water and so was careful not to run over it. But the king could not sense the pit and fell right into it. Now, when the stag is running away, far away it can sense that there is some dirty water and there's some smell of what you call kichad, slime. Okay, so there was a hole. Actually, what is this? There is a hole, and in which the hole is covered. The hole is not seen because there is a tree, fallen tree on the hole. But in the hole was dirty water, slime, slush, what we call kichad, dirty water. Now, animals again have a strong sense of smell. So, when the stag was running from far only, it could smell that dirty water, and it was careful to jump over that hole so that it doesn't fall into that hole. But the king, first of all, he's running. He's angry, he's not in his proper senses, and plus human beings don't have the sense, they don't have the instincts of animals. We have learnt about sense organs. We have this power of speaking, but animals have their senses are more sharper than us. They are sharper, so we human beings don't have that sharp sense, either of smell or hearing. So the king was running and he did not smell that slime or the dirty water. He could not, because he was he was not thinking properly, and suddenly he falls into that pit. That hole, pit is the hole in the ground. He falls right into it. After a while, the stag realized that he was not being followed any longer. He understood that the king had perhaps fallen into the pit. So the stag went back to the king and saw the king struggling for his life. The stag felt very sorry for the king. He decided to save the king's life, even though the king was following him with the intention of to kill him. Now, after running for some time, the stag suddenly finds that the king is not, he understands that the king is not following him. And he understands again, he realizes that the king had maybe fallen into that pit. Back there was a hole with rotting water, and maybe the king had fallen into it. So now the stag, what any of us would do is that we would say, okay, let the king die. He was going to kill me. Let him die now in that slimy water. It serves him good, very good. Let him die. But the stag was not like that. He goes back to the pit and sees the king is struggling for his life. He is trying to save his life, the king. And the stag feels very sad for the king. He feels very sorry. And he decides to save the king's life. Now he says, no, I cannot leave him dying like this. cannot leave a man dying like this when I know I can help him. And he decides to help the king and save his life. Now look at the change here. The king was actually trying to kill with the intention. The king's idea was to kill the stag. So the king was following the stag with the intention with the idea, with the plan to kill him. But the stag is so good at heart, so soft-hearted, so noble that even if the king may come out and attack him later, after coming out of the pit, the king may still kill him, but still the stag says, I will help the king. The stag told the king not to worry and to be brave for a while longer. He then caught a huge rock with his hind legs and lowered himself into the pit. The king caught hold of his neck, and the stag climbed out onto the level ground and carried the king to safety. Now the stag tells the king, don't worry, I will help you. Somehow you should please try to wait for us a little while. I'll try of a plan. I'll think of a plan. And then he takes a huge rock and catches his back legs, hind legs. Remember, we have done this in the hind legs and forelegs in the Brementown musicians. Hind legs are the back legs, the legs at the back. What we say behind, hind. And with the back legs, he catches the rock, and the front part of his body he puts down into the hole, into the pit. So the top part of his body, upper half of his body is lowered down into the hole. Now the king wants something to catch. So the king quickly catches the neck of the stag, and slowly the stag pulls him out of the pit and brings him out onto the level ground, brings him on the flat earth ground. And this is the way he saves the life of the king. The stag saves the life of the king. Now see what happens next. The king thanked the noble stag again and again and asked him to return with him to Benares, where he could have anything and everything he wanted. But the stag did not want anything in return for his help. He just requested the king to rule wisely and well and be kind to animals. Then the noble stag disappeared into the forest. King Brahmadatta then vowed not to hunt or hurt any animal. Now, after that, after coming out onto the land, out of the pit, the king realizes what a great creature, what a great deed, what a great the help that the stag has done to him. He has saved his life. The stag has saved his life. So the king is so thankful, so grateful. He is saying, please come. I'm the king of Benares. I can give you anything that you want. Please come with me to my palace. I will look after you very well. You will live on my palace grounds. You will not have any danger. You will not have to worry for anything. I will look after you very well for all that you have done for me. You have saved my life. But the stag again is not greedy. He says, I don't want anything for your help, for helping you. What does he say? He just asks, asking politely that please rule wisely, rule the kingdom very nicely, take care of your people, and also be kind to animals. This is very important, being kind to animals. So he says, be kind to animals. And then the noble stag disappeared into the forest. And then the stag just goes away into the forest without asking for anything. He could have asked for anything, but he doesn't want anything. That day, King Brahmadatta vowed. Vowed means promised. Promises himself. Takes a promise not to hunt or hurt any animal. Not to hunt or kill any animal. Now this is a very important lesson that we get from this lesson, that animals actually don't attack human beings. They just want to be left alone in peace. When we attack them, they are scared. And that is why when sometimes animals try to attack us. If we allow them to live in peace, they are harmless. They do not do any harm. So let us all learn to be kind to animals. Let them also live on this earth. They deserve it equally. Now let us learn some new words that we have done with in the story. Courtiers, outskirts, marksman, instincts. Instinct is a sense to save oneself, protect oneself. Escape, severely. Severely means strictly. Hurriedly. Thicket, excellent. Pretense, realized. Taunts, chased. Slime, struggling. Requested, vowed. Intention. Children, you will write the spellings of the new words in your book 5 times, and you will also practice reading the lesson. Thank you and have a nice day.